Hello and welcome to our next NAP. It's a second video about the fiscal sponsorship. Just to remind you guys, NAP stands for Nonprofit Auditor Points, and I'm Irina Ryshkova, your nonprofit auditor. I have a small CPA practice in downtown Oakland in San Francisco. These videos are not authoritative, they simply created by me to share my experience and some knowledge with nonprofit community and hopefully help nonprofits to understand some accounting and arrangements under the general accepted accounting principles in the United States. So let's continue talking about fiscal sponsorships. We discussed in the video number 1, what does it mean to be fiscally sponsored? Who can be fiscally sponsored? 2 parties in agreement, sponsor and project. And we define that project can be either one individual, small group, 2, 3, or even larger group of folks that are not exempt under the Internal Revenue Services and related states sections. Now, let's continue talking about fiscal sponsorships. What are responsibility of both parties? Like we define in video number 1 that this is an agreement, arrangement, a contract, obligation between 2 groups, sponsor and project, or sponsoree, we can call it. So when we're saying project, we just need to understand we're talking about the entity or person or group of people that being sponsored. So it's project and sponsor. Both sides have responsibilities, and we need to remember this is agency relationship. Under the agency relationship, sponsor who is 501c3 has a final and ultimate responsibility. And even though a lot of projects believe that they do have independence, they just simply gonna pay fee to sponsor organization, and the sponsor organization has no responsibility for the project, that would be incorrect. Because again, 501c3 is an agent, and project is acting as a part of larger 501c3. Therefore, let's define what are responsibilities of the project. Project is responsible to conduct program activity for which they're asking to be sponsored, right? So they need to do day-to-day activities and implement program. They also responsible for their own fundraising. Typically when they ask for 501c3 to be their sponsor, 501c3 is not responsible to raising funds on their behalf. This is responsibility of the project. However, as we defined before, the project has ability to do even better fundraising because they will be acting as a part of larger existing 501c3 that has history, that hopefully has the good ratings on the public charity websites, and the donors will be more willingly to donate. So fundraising will be easier. In addition, project can ask for help of existing 501c3 for writing grant applications and etc., which has to be defined in the arrangement agreement. And the last and the most important, it's a compliance and reporting. The project need to make sure that they are compliant with all their activities that they're conducting. And they have to do proper reporting under the grants that they received. Again, most likely project will ask for help and guidance from the fiscal sponsor to see how that can be achieved, but it's their responsibility because they're conducting the program activity. So that would be responsibility of the project or sponsored organization or entity. It's a program execution, fundraising, and compliance and reporting. Now, the 501c3 also has responsibilities that needs to be well defined and understood by any nonprofit organization that take any project under their wing. They need to understand what they need to do with their responsibility. First of all, they need to do complete oversight and accountability. They need to ensure that the sponsored project adheres to all legal and regulatory standards. They don't need to do day-to-day compliance, but they need to make sure and oversight the project. They also have to do administrative support, providing services such as bookkeeping, tax filing, payroll tax filing, human resource support. These administrative tasks very often will be specifically outlined on agreement and need to be understood by both parties. And the last, it's fiduciary responsibility. Fiduciary responsibility, it's a make sure that a sponsor receives all the funds from that related to the program, dispersing cash and funds in accordance with the project, and keeping clear and clean accounting for finances, and provided necessary financial support and for support from the finance standpoint to the nonprofit, to the project. Therefore, because there's the agreement arrangement can quite vary between parties, and to eliminate of misunderstanding, it's not just recommended. In my opinion, agreement has to be in writing between two parties. And this written agreement ideally needs to be either prepared or at least reviewed by attorney. Make sure that the both parties understand their responsibilities and expectations. Set up a proper expectations on both sides. So a written agreement must be drafted, reviewed by legal counsel, and signed. And the document written agreement needs to outline, first of all, scope of services, very critical on both sides. Typically, from the sponsor, which is 501c3, scope of services would include administrative tasks, some maybe fiduciary responsibility tasks, oversight responsibilities, and everything else in between that might include providing the office for operation, helping during their fundraising events, and so forth. This needs to be outlined. Number two, there needs to be written financial arrangements. How funds will be managed. Is there going to be separate bank account, same bank account, but they will be, for example, in the accounting system specifically allocated? How reports going to be provided to the project? Maybe they will be weekly, monthly. What the cash statements will be provided. Everything else needs to be discussed, understood, and documented. Also, it needs to be fee structured. As we indicated before, sponsor organization very often will receive percentage of the total revenue that a project will bring. And typical arrangement is between 5 and 10%, depending probably on the tasks that 501c3 is taking upon. So this needs to be outlined. How it is going to be calculated, how often, and how will be paid, and so forth. This will also, contract or agreement between parties also needs to include termination clause. At what point this relationship will end. If it's just for a limited period of time for specific project, maybe that's going to be just over the summer, then it's just going to be agreement for the 3 months or whatever, 4 months, for half of the year, 1 year, or maybe of completion of the project. If it's much longer agreement, then it will be saying it's gonna last until either party will inform each other that we are ready to finish this arrangement and give each other maybe like 2 or 3 months to complete the agreement. And so every possible scenario when this arrangement might end needs to be outlined in agreement. And definitely it needs to outline how it's going to be ending, how the funds will be distributed, what is financial responsibilities at the end of the fiscal sponsor and project. And also agreement needs to outline reporting requirements. Sponsor organization needs to indicate what we are responsible for. We will be doing these administrative reporting tasks, but these are tasks that project needs to do. For example, project will need to provide necessary information for the sponsor to file, or project organization need to make sure that all fundraising activities and potential grant letters and communication with the donors that project does also provided to the sponsor, so they know if there's any additional responsibility that needs to be done under overall umbrella of 501c3. Therefore, to summarize, the agreement between sponsor and project needs to be in writing, for mainly to eliminate any misunderstanding, make sure that both parties are clear of their responsibilities and what kind of consideration both party will give, because it's a contractual obligations, so both party will required to do some work in exchange of another work or services. It needs to be clearly done, understood, very important, not just written and signed. It needs to be understood by both parties, and ideally lawyer, legal counsel need to review, and both parties have to retain the copies of such an agreement. Expectations needs to be clear. It can be written in very simple terms, and it needs to make sure that it needs to be signed. And that would be all under the fiscal sponsorship agreements, how the parties have to identify their responsibilities and their rights and how they need to be documented in order to make sure that their fiscal sponsorship agreement is successful and does not cause any problems later. Thank you so much. Please check me out. Check our next video for the video 3, where we're going to continue discussing fiscal sponsorship, accounting, and recording in the books, revenue and expenses. Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here with me. Looking forward to see you for video number 3.